How's it going?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. I'm just going to be setting up our one slide. That's just going to be a backdrop. And then obviously waiting for everybody else to get in as well. And first of all, thank you all so much for volunteering to be here tonight. This really means a lot to me. What's kind of funny is that I've kind of gathered like all of my managers at some point or another in my life into one place. And now you guys all get to see what I've become, I guess. But we got about, I think, 15 or 16 folks coming in tonight. So they're all going to be filling in right now. Looks like we got 10 in right now. Okay. Right. Okay. And we are recording this too. Wonderful. Okay, great. Okay, admit. Okay. Up to 14. We'll give it like 1 or 2 more minutes for the stragglers to come on in. But I will kind of explain how tonight will go. Again, thank you all so much for volunteering your time to be here tonight. We have all 6 of our panelists here, which is wonderful. I will kind of walk us through how the first speaker will go. We have about like 40 or so minutes that's dedicated to each of the panelists to speak, and then about 20 minutes allotted for a general Q&A. And in the event that our audience is feeling a little shy tonight, I have some questions prepared. So the idea too is that you will have like about 6 minutes to speak. At the 1 minute mark, I'll probably put like an emoji up or something for you to know that your time's almost over. But I think we are ready to go. All right, wonderful. So I will briefly introduce everyone that is here. So we have Jess Murray, who is the Vice President of Hoboken Strategy Group. We have Brittany McLoughlin, who's the Executive Assistant at Save Barnegat Bay. We have Sarah Pigeon, the Executive Director of Step Up Solar. We have Sunni Vargas, the Political Director of the Working Families Alliance. Sean Simmers, the External Affairs Liaison at Ocean Winds and also Blue Point Winds. And Sam LaRocca, who is the Well Testing Program Manager at Raritan Headwaters Association. So thank you all again so much. And let's kick this off. Jess, you will be our first to speak. Thank you so much. I will start the timer in just a second. But to start, do your name, position, organization, or company, what undergrad degree you have, where you went, any other degrees that you have, maybe any other hats that you wear, and that'll be the start, and then I'll walk you through the rest.
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, David, for the introduction. If someone's got to go first, so I will wear that hat tonight. So just to kick us off, again, thank you everyone for jumping on the phone with us tonight. I appreciate it. I appreciate people showing up to listen to me talk. I wouldn't listen to me talk, but I hope that somebody gets something interesting out of this. My name is Jess Murray. I currently am vice president at a firm called Hoboken Strategy Group. I have been there since February, so I'm coming up on about a year now there. And then I have previous experience in the legislature, which I will talk a little bit more about later. About me, I graduated from Rutgers University, New Brunswick in 2019. I studied both political science and public policy, and I minored in Spanish. What am I missing? Was that it? Was that all I was supposed to cover at the beginning?
Yeah, that's good right now. And then any other hats that you may wear if you volunteer anywhere else.
I am a Mercer County Young Democrat. I volunteer with Princeton Mutual Aid, and I am officially a 2025 fellow at the New Leaders Council, New Jersey. I think that's it.
Amazing. Great, Jess. All right, so next we're going to go into your current position, or maybe you could also speak on your previous position a little bit. So the question is, how is your role or your position a climate or environmental job? What is the scope of your work in that context too? Do you work more locally, municipally, or regionally, statewide, or are we talking the whole country?
So my current job, I would say, is probably the least environmental that I've had. So I will spend the least amount of time talking about my current job, but I will talk more about some of my prior positions. At Hoboken Strategy Group, my main function really is to help walk my clients through the legislative process in New Jersey. So I have clients that range from grassroots advocates to nonprofits to corporate clients that operate with a national, if not global, presence. So I represent all of them. My work at the firm is limited just to New Jersey. So my main function is really just the New Jersey legislature. So I work with, legislators from the southernmost point of the state all the way up to the northernmost point. Our firm does cover federal appropriations, and so we do a little work in DC as well, but I'm not really involved in any of that.
Gotcha. So we'll shift gears maybe a little bit to the previous job. And for those that may not know, Jess was the chief of staff for Senator Linda Greenstein, who is the longtime vice chair of the Senate Energy and Environment Committee. So in that regard, I'd love for you to maybe share what are some of your most proudest achievements that you had in that role, which I know is much more of an environmental role.
Sure. So yes, as David said, I was chief of staff to Senator Greenstein for 3 years, through 2 legislative sessions, 2 elections, 1 redistricting. It was a packed 3 years. I will say some of the issues that I worked on in Senator Greenstein's office were a little bit less big picture issues compared to my first job, and I will talk more about this if anyone's interested. But my first job, I got to work on New Jersey's plastic bag ban and plastic straw ban, and then in addition to New Jersey is what we call electric vehicle omnibus bill. That bill established all of the rebate programs for electric vehicle car purchases, the charging infrastructure, and really built out the charging infrastructure in New Jersey. So with Greenstein, it was a continuation of a lot of that work. Some of the less sexy issues, if you will, a lot of building procurement, making sure that when folks are constructing in New Jersey, we are such a high density state that we're trying to use greener materials and also proactively, adopt cleaner and greener technologies. And as well as all the way down to, one bill that we passed was requiring that municipalities consider climate change when they draw up their municipal master plans every 10 years. So scope was really huge. We did everything from clean energy to emerging contaminants to water quality issues. But it was an incredible learning opportunity.
Amazing. And then to conclude here, maybe what is some advice or an anecdote that you can give to how you kind of got into this profession? Was this something you knew you wanted to always do? Did you kind of fall into place? But how were you able to kind of make an impact? And what would you say to somebody who might be undergrad or maybe even high school that wants to break into this field?
So I think even if you're not necessarily interested in policy making, even if you're maybe more interested on the advocacy side, I always encourage people to go spend some time in a district office. It is for lack of better words, it is the hazing that we all have to go through. Either you work in a district office or you work on a campaign, and you learn how to do all of the nitty gritty things that have to be done in order to make change happen. So in a district office, you're working with constituents, you're getting those phone calls about people who are seeing the legislation that you enact affect their pocketbooks and affect their cost of living, and having to deal with those issues as well. But I think a district office is a really great place to learn a lot about a lot. We're talking about environmental issues tonight, but my first boss, her background was in healthcare. So I did a lot of environmental work, but I also learned a lot about step therapy and about prior authorization. In her office, I also learned about like H1 visas, I think. There's something about au pairs. Like you learn a lot about just issues that you would never know are issues until you're working in a district office and someone picks up the phone and calls and says, you know, I can't get approved for this program, or I can't do X, Y, or Z because of this law.
Right.
And you become a little bit of a mini expert in a bunch of different things. And I just think it's a phenomenal experience, and the knowledge and the people that you'll meet will be so invaluable.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jess. And pretty good on time for our first go.
Thanks.
So next up, we're gonna go to Brittany. So Brittany, take it away. We will start with your name, position, organization, where you graduated, what was your degree, and any other hats you wear.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. And thank you, Dave, for inviting me to speak on this panel. It's a really nice opportunity. My name is Brittany McLoughlin, and I'm the Executive Assistant and Community Engagement Coordinator for Save Barnegat Bay. I graduated first from OCC with an associate's degree in environmental science, and then I also have a bachelor's degree in sustainability with a concentration in policy from Stockton University. And I think that was all you asked, right? Other hats at the moment? No, not really. Pretty much focused on Save Barnegat Bay things.
Awesome. All right. So then with your current position with Save Barnegat Bay, how would you describe this as a climate or an enviro job? What's your scope of work? You know, what's the lowest level that you go to, the highest level that you go to?
Yeah. So Save Barnegat Bay is an environmental, non-governmental, nonprofit organization. So all of our work is working on local environment mostly, kind of surrounding the Barnegat Bay watershed. So we do a lot of different things. We focus on advocacy and education mostly are the two pillars of work that we do. We work with a lot of local municipalities, local municipal officials from all 37 different towns that are in the watershed. We also work with other environmental nonprofits statewide on state issues like the plastic bag issue that Jess brought up before. We also work on plastic legislation, things like that on state levels too, and other environmental issues on the state level. What I do day to day currently kind of changes, which is really cool. That's a fun thing about working for a small nonprofit. I get to work on advocacy issues, statewide legislation. I get to work with local municipalities trying to fight a big development that's going to be tearing down a bunch of woods or wetlands. And I get to help out neighbors who are concerned about things happening in their backyard. I also get to do education programs with a bunch of kids and adults alike. And it's just really cool to be able to sharpen up skills and do all these kind of things. And again, every day looks different. So it's kind of a fun job.
It's awesome. It's like the perks of those nonprofits. You get to be really hands-on and really communicative with the people that you're like kind of getting your cohort. That's great. And then I'd like to maybe touch on, or maybe have you touch on, like, what are you most proud of that you've done at Save Barnegat Bay, either that you've done or that you're currently working toward?
Yeah, so the big issue that we're working on right now is our effort to try to remand the settlement agreement that the DEP made with BASF in regards to the Sibagagi Superfund site. So there's a lot of detail, and if you want more information, I can also touch on it a little bit more later. But basically, the DEP settled natural resource damages that had to do with the legacy pollutants that were discharged into the Toms River, into the local drinking water in the Toms River, into the Atlantic Ocean, into Barnegat Bay, from a chemical company called Sibagagi or Toms River Chemical. It had a few names over the few decades that it was in operation. And the DEP made a deal with the current owners of the Sibagagi Superfund site, basically saying that if you do X, Y, and Z projects on the Superfund site itself, and as long as you get it cleaned up to the Superfund standards, then you can settle all of your natural resource damages. So any damages to our natural resources that Sibagagi historically committed for almost 50 years, you kind of get like a clean slate, you're good to go. So most of the natural resources that were taken into account during the settlement agreement had to do with damages that were done on site, and there was no calculations that we know of today that went into a discussion of natural resources that were damaged offsite, like to the Thames River, to Barnegat Bay, and to the Atlantic Ocean. So we're trying to, in court right now, get an appeal from the appellate division to try to get the settlement agreement that was finalized between DEP and BASF remanded back to the DEP to try to include all of the natural resources that were damaged over the decades-long operation at the Ciba-Geigy site. So that's kind of touches more on my sustainability background and environmental justice issues, and trying to just make sure that our communities that were greatly impacted by decades and decades of harm receive the justice they deserve. So that's something I'm very proud of to be working on in this at this capacity.
That's great. That's great. And, you know, it's a noble task that you guys are taking on. And, you know, I remember when I was an intern, like I first got like glimpses of like what Ciba-Geigy could be. And I'm just glad that more people seem to know about it now. Like if you kind of like hear it now from like other enviros, even not in the Ocean County area. But now shifting to the last question, Brittany, is to conclude, let's think of like, how did you get to where you are today, and what advice would you give to some high schoolers or college students that want to enter this field, but they don't know what path to take?
Yeah, so I was pretty lucky. I always wanted to work in the environmental field. I don't know I didn't really come to this like pivotal moment in my life where this is the direction that I need to go in. I always just somehow was interested in the environmental field in general. So it was pretty easy to pick what I was going to be studying in college, but I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to do in the environmental field. So that is the kind of direction and movement that I navigated throughout college. Was I started at OCC because I knew I wanted to work in an environmental field, but I didn't know doing what. So figured I'd start off at a community college, get the basics, and try to hone in on a specific field or direction in my bachelor's when I was getting my bachelor's. So did that. I learned that I really liked working on advocacy issues, and I was interested in politics and learning more about how government and sustainability can kind of take form. So I found the sustainability program at Stockton. And from there, I kind of tried to push myself to get more involved. I really, really disliked public speaking when I was in college. I absolutely hated it. So I thought I was just going to be like an environmental scientist, get a degree, work in the background somewhere. And that was going to be my contribution to the world, leaving zero actual mark, but kind of just in the background and behind the scenes. And I learned that I was really passionate about talking about issues with people and movement building and things like that. And I was like, well, I can't really do that if I'm kind of in the background behind the scenes as much. So I really pushed myself to get out there and say yes to a lot of different opportunities. I met some people who were doing policy work and working in movements like Sunrise Movement, if anyone's ever heard of that. It's a national organization. Volunteered with them for a little bit and started to figure out exactly how I can fit in this field, and started meeting with local people who were in the environmental realm, and did a lot of informational interviews, got to know people locally and what they were doing, and helped figure out and shape the kind of work that I'm doing now. And all the opportunities that I've had came from going out, saying yes, meeting new people, and going on those stupid informational interviews that they make you go on in college that you hate doing.
Yeah.
Every single one, every single job I got was from doing those informational interviews. So I would say just keep pushing yourself, try new things. You learn you don't like something, that's fine, that's great. I learned that I wanted to go into science initially and be a scientist. I learned that I didn't like working in a lab, so I had to figure out something else, which was shocking. But then I got to learn that I really liked movement building. I really liked working with community members and the public. And I really liked working on policy and things like that. So I would have never learned that about myself if I didn't keep saying yes and trying new things. So I know it's very cliche, but if you push yourself, you get to learn a lot and you get to do new opportunities, learn more about yourself than you ever thought you would. So
Love it. Thank you so much, Brittany. And that point about community building, I think that's a really great segue into our next speaker, which is going to be Sarah, with the work that you do at Step Up Solar and at Solar Landscape. So Sarah, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Sarah Pigeon. I'm the Executive Director for Step Up Solar, which is a nonprofit solar education and workforce development organization, which started as a program and initiative of Solar Landscape, which is a commercial and community solar company based in New Jersey, but working all across the country. It started as an initiative of the company to help make sure that the training and education needed to access a career as a solar installer and in the solar field was accessible and part of putting the community in community solar, so to speak. But last year, we actually broke it off and formed it as a standalone 501c3 nonprofit organization. So I personally actually have my undergrad degree in graphic design. I attended the School of Visual Arts in New York City and earned a BFA in design. I thought I was going to be a graphic designer, and now I work in climate education and workforce development. So definitely, in contrast to Brittany, you knew exactly what you wanted to do, which is so amazing and lucky. But for folks who are in the audience who are like, I have no idea what I want to do, just know there's still many opportunities to change your career. I also have my MBA in management for nonprofit and mission-driven organizations from Marlborough College in Vermont. I used to wear more hats than I do now. So prior to coming to join Solar Landscape and leading the Step Up organization, I was chief program officer at a nonprofit in New York City called Solar One, which is a nonprofit that's dedicated to making solar more accessible through technical assistance, workforce development, and K through 12 education. I was there for close to 15 years. So I spent a lot of time working in the New York City climate education space. New York City Department of Education is the largest school district in the country with over 1 million students. So it was a really big program, and I was there for many years, but very excited to be back where I actually grew up in New Jersey and working, doing the same work with a brand new organization.
That's awesome. I really love that story of how, depending on what your undergrad is, doesn't really define what your entire career is going to be. You're not the only one that I know that's like that. I mean, our colleague Kevin is like a great example of that as well. And even Gina. I mean, Gina was a nurse and then is also working at Solar Landscape with us. But I just want you all to know in the audience that, there is flexibility here with this field. You can kind of get your foot in the door anywhere. And I'd also like to ask you, Sarah, too, like what's maybe something that you're most proud of either at Solar Landscape, or maybe if there's like another time or like another accomplishment in the past that just like really highlights the work that you've been able to do?
That's a great question. So I think a lot of times when I tell people that I work in workforce development, they are unsure what that means. The space that I'm in is focusing on providing training for people who are or underemployed and facing systemic barriers to family sustaining jobs. So we provide training, we build meaningful partnerships with local community-based organizations and community colleges and workforce organizations. And we come in and do hard skills training, how to install solar, and actually help people get jobs. So I think one of the things that I'm not necessarily most proud of, but most excited about, is that when I started doing this work 15 years ago in New York City, people would laugh and be like, solar jobs in the urban environment? There's not any solar jobs. And now it's a huge career in the whole metropolitan area. So I think, seeing that transformation happen over time has been really, really remarkable. And now, when I do a solar training and I go partner with a nonprofit, and we're not only training people for jobs, but we have other solar companies coming out to the training asking for people to print out their resume on the spot. And seeing people, who have been facing hardships, maybe who are impacted by the criminal justice system, and seeing those folks get access to jobs that have the potential to really shift their path and, not only pay a livable wage, but also have a meaningful career in helping mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis. It's very, very rewarding work.
Awesome. And then I guess to cap it off, what advice would you give to people trying to figure it out right now, not knowing how they can make an impact in the climate crisis?
I think the biggest thing for me is just there are so many different ways to get involved. And there's so many different career pathways, right? Like, even the solar industry is continuing to grow. It is unstoppable. And there's jobs for everyone. So you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to work in sales. We have an HR team at Solar Landscape. There's people who work full-time doing graphic design. So there's really just, it's like, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What brings you joy? And then find those work opportunities in a company or a career or an organization or a government agency that is working towards a climate goal.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. All right, let's go on down to one of my favorite political operatives, Sunni Vargas.
Please
How are
don't
you?
describe me as that. Hi, everybody.
Sunni, you can go and right into your story. I know that you're very
All right.
excited to tell it.
Oh, thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Sunni Vargas. I currently serve as the political director for New Jersey Working Families Party. The Working Families Party is a progressive political party around the United States. So I believe we're now in 20 states across the US. We focus on advocating for policies that primarily support working class people, like economic justice and social equality. Our goal is to provide an alternative to the traditional two-party system and help elevate working class families and working class people in the political process. So whether that's running for office or finding a voice inside of policy when laws and bills are getting made, we want to make sure that the working class is centered in that. So my degree is in political science. My concentration was in international relations. I attended Monmouth University and I graduated in 2021. I very much enjoyed my time there. One of the reasons I went was because I loved the political science program. And it was also about 35 minutes from my house in Ocean County. They also gave me a pretty nice academic scholarship, which was helpful weighing my options. I myself am working class. My dad is a state worker. My mom works in our local school district. So I was the first person to go to college on either my maternal or paternal side. So it was a really big choice for me. And I think similar to folks on this call, that burden of like needing to know what you were going to study and what you were going to do definitely weighed on my like young teenage self. And when I went to school, my parents probably thought I was absolutely crazy. They thought, okay, she'll be a lawyer. And I did not become a lawyer, but that's what they were like, okay, political science, lawyer. And I think many families that they don't have that experience and background in navigating the college process. Typically that there's a lot of pressure on the student or the young person, right? But yeah, I did want to talk about some other hats that I wear. So in addition to being the political director at WFP, I'm on the board of Latino Action Network and Gen Z for New Jersey. I also do some work in my town and county with our local Democratic Party. So I currently serve as the municipal chair for where I live in Lacey Township. I am a county committee person, an elected county committee person, and I also help run the Ocean County Young Democrats. So I'm pretty involved in helping run some of our Democratic organization here in the county that is very, very red. So we are definitely in opposition and in the minority here. I know it's not that at large across the state, but we do what we can. We most recently ramped up our Young Democrats Club a few years ago, and we've been starting to run younger candidates, which is really exciting. I think I hit everything from your first question, but let me know.
Oh yeah, you hit a grand slam basically.
Awesome.
Wonderful, Sunny. But I'd also like to talk about maybe like, I know you've had a pretty extensive track record with the environmental field in New Jersey, especially with your past background with New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. But between that, your time there, or now with the Working Families Alliance, what would you say is like something you're super proud about that you were able to accomplish, or something that's maybe down the road?
Yeah. So as far as working at the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, I helped to run our clean energy work there. One of my favorite parts was getting to work in communities across the state and really helping to combat the misinformation around clean energy, like community solar and offshore wind. I know that's come up tonight as well. But through our partnership with Solar Landscape, our nonprofit to private partnership there, we were able to help connect hundreds of people to community solar around the state. And I think that's really important because whether you live in an older home, you rent your home, or you just don't have a lot of sun on your property, this is really important to help you not only get savings on your electric bill, but be a part of the clean energy transition. And then additionally, living at the shore, I'm in Ocean County. There's so much misinformation around offshore wind, what that's going to look like. And I think I'm still working on it today in my WFP role because we want to make sure that it's affordable. And as we transition a lot to clean energy, which is desperately needed, we have to make sure that every member of the state, no matter where you work or how much money you make, they're included in that transition, and we're being mindful when we make policy. But yeah, definitely in my role at WFP, some of our issues and core platform is climate action. WFP is an advocate for the Green New Deal and policies that advocate, for climate change, making sure there's good paying jobs in that clean energy transition. So I still get to work with a lot of our same partners, whether it's, other advocates in this space, other nonprofits, or with private organizations, companies. We're making sure that we as working families are at the table and talking about climate action. We also do some work on healthcare for all, economic inequality and quality, criminal justice reform, and also racial justice and equity. So our policy platforms, I think someone mentioned it before, like in many jobs, you'll become a mini expert in a lot of different things. And I definitely feel that that's how this role is. We're working on so many different things with multiple different advocates and allies. So we want to make sure that we have a full encompassing progressive platform. Hopefully that was helpful. Anything I missed?
No, I actually think you covered everything, which is fantastic. And I think we have a nice natural segue here into Sean with offshore wind. Sean, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Sean Simmers. I'm an External Affairs Associate and Community Liaison at Blue Point Wind, which is a project under the Ocean Winds North America portfolio. So for those not familiar, the way offshore wind generally works are these multinational or international companies that have projects based in different areas. So I work mainly on our New Jersey project, support our Massachusetts projects where possible, and then we have one project in California, super early, so a little bit of help there, but my main focus is New Jersey. I went to school for political science at TCNJ, graduated in 2021, focused on international studies, minored in Spanish. Everyone always asks, so did you do climate stuff or environmental work in college? I took one class on environmental policy in South America. That was about it. Me getting into a green job in offshore wind was just kind of by chance. My background, I worked in New York State Government Assembly District 30, so that's Queens, Woodside, Sunnyside, working in a district office. So it was great to hear Jess talk about that. So I wholeheartedly agree. The amount of work that you get to do, and started as an intern, became a senior intern, that eventually became director of constituent services. There's just so much to do with these district offices, and not enough people to do it. So you pick up a lot of things quickly. Another hat that I wear in my current role is I support our technical and permitting teams with onshore development. So that includes onshore routing, converter stations, land acquisition. You may see signs down the shore about high voltage cables. That's something that I deal with as well. And as Sunni mentioned, a lot of misinformation. So I'm the one that goes out, goes to do tabling events, goes to community fairs, whatever it may be, and just answer questions. I know a lot of people have concerns, or I know for me, I never heard of it until I started researching for this role. So I take it with a grain of salt that I knew nothing coming in. I'm coming up on 2 years now and feel like I know a little too much. So always go into conversations just understanding it's either they know nothing, or they know a little bit, or they know the wrong stuff. So that's a little bit of my background.
Oh, that's great, Sean. You also touched on something that we brought up a couple of times throughout this panel, which is, your undergrad degree doesn't really define you or constrain you. I went to TCNJ. I graduated 23, and as you know, any other students there might know, we really don't have an environmental science program there or an environmental studies program. But you kind of take what you can and then apply yourself elsewhere, like in volunteering or internships. You don't need to let your degree specifically define what you end up doing. And now I'd like to ask you, Sean, I know that the farms haven't been completed. they're not there yet. So maybe you can't say that that's something you accomplished, but what is something that maybe you're doing now at Blue Point Winds that you feel really confident in, or that you're really excited about doing right now?
Yeah, so I think right now, something that I'm proud of that we're doing is really just going out and talking to anybody and everybody. I like to say the fall is when I live in Atlantic City. We go to the Teachers Convention, League of Municipalities, ACP Offshore Wind Conference was down there. EDA loves Atlantic City, so I'm down there talking to anybody and everybody about offshore wind. But actually, that we've already done. So I've been in the project, like I said, a little under 2 years. We prepped a bid into New Jersey 3. So for those of you that don't know, the Board of Public Utilities runs these solicitations and says, here, what's your project going to cost? How much power? Yada, yada. We were preparing a bid to enter the third solicitation, decided not to due to macroeconomic conditions, inflation, and we're seeing the results of that now. But when we decided not to bid, we reached out to all of our partners and said, hey, we still want to support you. How can we provide funding now to support programs that you're doing? And it's not going to be obviously 6 figures, $1 million, whatever it may be, but it's something that can help in the short term and show that we're still committed. So even though we didn't bid and we don't have any revenue for the next 10, 15 years, still really proud to donate time, money, manpower, whatever it may be to local groups, because nonprofits don't have all the resources and they're the ones doing great work. So it's part about being a good community partner. So that's something that we did and that we're doing now.
Wonderful. And then is there any nice kind of cap on what you're talking about that you would like to inspire or help guide anybody else in the audience tonight?
Yeah, so building off what Sunni said, I went to school for political science and everyone's like, oh, you're going to be a lawyer? It's, no. It's like, oh, you're going to run for a public office? I'm like, no. They're like, what are you going to do? Like, I'll figure it out. So went to school for political science. Like I said, I worked for state government. I worked for the Associated Press doing vote entry, so calling random municipalities across the country, tallying votes for midterms and general elections. Worked for a nonprofit career association. Really just did whatever I could. I think I worked a little bit building a database for New York City elections in, I guess it was 2020. So when I look back, I've done a million things that were all super random, but there's certain skills you pick up. For me in external affairs, it's just being able to talk to anybody about nothing for hours on end. So all those different experiences really not only built up my skills, but also built up, my connections. I know everyone is crazy about LinkedIn and connections and this and that, but it really is talking to as many people and doing as much as you can. I think I got paid for 2 of those roles. For anybody who's worked in state government, I was on a year contract and I was getting $5,000 a year. So I actually pulled a pay stub out of my winter coat the other day and it said my paycheck was $200. So it was like I was pretty much just working for the fun of it, getting that experience. So it may not be the glory of money and whatever early on, but it's just picking up connections, resources, and building from the bottom.
Great. Thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, Sam, take it away.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I kind of just want to start by saying how affirming that this has been for me. Being surrounded by people who have their own unique stories that are very similar and overlap in a lot of ways, and just kind of seeing that intersectionality right in front. I feel like I'm getting a lot out of this too, just like I hope everybody else who is listening in that might be, either transitioning careers or starting a new career path, exploring a career path as a young professional. I think I'm proud and happy to be here, and I hope everybody else is too. But yeah. A little bit about me. So I am Samantha LaRocca. I am the well testing program manager with Raritan Headwaters Association. Raritan Headwaters is a conservation nonprofit. We are located in kind of central New Jersey, the upper Raritan. So think Morris County, Hunterdon County, and Somerset County. I got my undergraduate for a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology back in 2020 from Westchester University. And I also decided to add a minor about halfway through, give or take, into environmental health, which is kind of when all of my pieces started colliding. A little bit about my current position, which David knows plenty about. He was actually my program assistant back in 2023. So I love seeing everything come full circle. But essentially, I manage a very large nonprofit program. We test about 1,300 wells a year, and it's one full-time person and one part-time person. So it's definitely a lot on each of our plates. But our goal as a program is to make private well testing easy, reliable, and affordable for local New Jersey residents. Essentially, testing is not required in New Jersey. For anybody that doesn't know of private wells, only during home sales. You don't have to put on any remediation. You can live in your home for 40 years and say, I'm never going to touch my water. I'm never going to test it. That's your choice in New Jersey. So there are a lot of contaminants, obviously, that can be extremely harmful, both man-made and naturally occurring, that can occur in groundwater. So our goal, with this program at Raritan Headwaters is to really be a resource for the community, to educate, answer questions, facilitate testing, and then get people in touch with treatment companies in order to remediate if they so choose, and things like that. As far as who we work with, we partner very strongly with townships, environmental commissions, and health departments in primarily the upper Raritan watershed. We do sometimes go outside of our watershed, but we primarily stay within New Jersey. And essentially, we partner with these townships to create designated testing days in their township once a year. So residents can always come and test at our offices for a nice discounted from our bulk state certified lab. We get a bulk discount. But to make it even more convenient, we will pack up this big giant van. You can see me a million miles away. And we bring all of our materials to the residents, usually outside of a municipal building, and we advertise, hey, we'll be here at this day and time. And these are all of the people that are partnering behind us or giving us that support. And it's definitely been a very unique experience. As many other people mentioned, I didn't know anything about well water when I got into this position. It was kind of a baptism by fire. But the person who hired me had a lot of confidence, at least in my transferable skills and soft skills and things like that. So I think there's a lot to be said for, not to jump ahead, but for, advice for anybody in the future, kind of, taking a chance on yourself for certain positions that you might not feel qualified for, but somebody looking at your resume might be putting all those dots together that you aren't giving yourself enough credit for. So I could keep talking, so just cut me off.
No, that's amazing, Sam. And I know for many of you here, I've worked with almost all of you, and I do have to say, Raritan Headwaters Association was one of the most interesting and cool jobs I did have. I mean, the van, the well testing van was probably the funnest thing I got to ever do. You get to drive this huge Ford Transit truck like van all over all over New Jersey for like
Yeah.
3 hours at like a time sometimes. It was such a great time. But Sam, I'd love for you to maybe talk a little bit about AmeriCorps and your time as a watershed ambassador, because sometimes kids might be coming out of college and maybe they don't know what kind of job they want to take immediately. They might be scared of taking a full-time job immediately. They don't know what to do. I've actually recommended AmeriCorps to a couple of my interns down the line, but we have a alumni of the program here. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a very large advocate for AmeriCorps. I'll kind of give you the short timeline as to how I got there and things like that. But when I started realizing that the intersection of humans and the environment was something that I was really passionate about, I actually started looking for internships. I think it was my sophomore or junior year of college. I ended up interning at Save Barnegat Bay, right next to Brittany, which is kind of small world. I love it all. And Gracie Ann Taylor from Save Barnegat Bay, towards the end of my internship, she was like, have you ever heard of this thing called AmeriCorps, the Watershed Ambassador Program in particular? And she kind of planted that seed in the back of my head. She goes, when you get close to graduating, either come talk to me about it, look it up. It's a great program. So that's exactly what I did. I definitely knew that leaving college, I didn't have the resume that I wanted to feel confident moving forward in the environmental field. And AmeriCorps really gave me that opportunity to flush out my resume, to feel confident, well-rounded, and more knowledgeable in a whole variety of aspects of the environmental field. So for anybody that doesn't know what AmeriCorps is, you might know what the Peace Corps is. They kind of call it the domestic Peace Corps. So you're essentially a volunteer. You're serving, but they do offer stipends and education. I can't think of the word, but
Like a tuition reimbursement?
Yes, essentially, like a reimbursement for tuition and things like that. And all you have to do is have a bachelor. Doesn't matter what kind of bachelor's degree you have. And there are positions, there's at least 20, I believe there's 23 positions now all throughout New Jersey. And the goal of the program is it's very oriented at actively training you for an environmental job. You will gain information and experience in like environmental education, stewardship, stream monitoring. You have a lot of agency, but also enough structure that you're given a certain amount of, certain presentations that you have to give to a variety of different people, whether it's, at schools or environmental commission meetings or whatever it is. And you're encouraged to do a variety of different projects, connecting with different local members. So I worked a lot with the Eatontown Environmental Commission, for example, and it kind of, at first, just helped me understand what environmental commission even was, given that I work so very closely with them in my current position. So the whole goal of AmeriCorps is essentially not only to be serving your community and to be doing positive things to impact the environment within a very small scope within a sub watershed, but they also ingrain a significant amount of training to deliberately push you forward into a career.
It's awesome. It's something I actually wish I could have done, but that's not to say that I didn't love immediately working for Senator Greenstein, Jess. It was a great time too. But all right, so at this time, we can go into open Q&A. I don't see anything in the chat right now, so I can give it a second, but I'd also like to give you, the panelists, an opportunity too, if you all want to ask each other something. I know some of you have worked together in the past in some way. Maybe you worked on a similar initiative together or not, and you can just kind of go for it. And I can throw a little helper in there too if you guys want. So I think I will. So in the current political climate, how do you manage communicating climate initiatives across an array of stakeholders with varying beliefs, various biases. I know kind of all of you to some degree has had to deal with this, either like Sam, like you have to deal with so many different municipalities. Brittany, you deal in Ocean County. Jess, entire legislature. I mean, lobbying in itself. Sunni and Sean, I know you're kind of at the forefront of like the hot topic, I feel like right now. And Sarah, I feel like, maybe solar is more bipartisan right now, but I even hear some horror stories from Kevin and Jenny about some people that are really anti-solar too. So I'll let you guys maybe jump in there.
I can jump in first. I talked a little bit about it. So offshore wind is a new concept in New Jersey, the United States, this side of the world in general. So our company's been doing it for 16 years overseas, mainly in UK, Portugal, yada, yada. What I've learned going to all these different events and talking to various different people is that everyone has a different concern or a different viewpoint. So it's really tough to go in with like a set idea of what you're going to talk about, what talking points you're going to use. It's really just hearing out people's side and not being combative. So for example, at the league municipalities, people would come up to me and say, you're killing whales. It's like, well, let's break down what really we're talking about here and then go from there. Because I'm not going to come out and just say, no, we're not. That doesn't help anything, right? So it's building constructive conversations and finding things they care about, right? So some people care about the environmental side of it. Some people care about the cost, as we mentioned before, rising cost of energy, rising cost of living. So you can't go into any conversation thinking you're going to know how it's going to go. So it's really starting at a point of just understanding where they're coming from. Because even if they have misinformation or they're, spreading misinformation, at some point deep down, there's something they truly care about. And obviously there's a way that we can get to that point through whether it's misinformation or just the unknown. It's finding what that really point is and then working from there, in my experience.
I guess I can kind of build off that, but I wanted to maybe approach this from a little bit of a different space. I think coming off the heels, I know we're still we're up and coming to Inauguration Day and we're approaching a new federal administration and things are going to be very different. I think for me, I'm half Hispanic on my dad's side. It was a real difficult thing to kind of settle and just download post-election, seeing how much different communities have swayed and how we need to reapproach those communities and whatever we're talking about, whether that's climate change, clean energy, or the various other topics that I know many of us work on. I think there's a bit of a reckoning where we have to approach different communities, whether it's the Hispanic community, AAPI community, Muslim and Arab communities, about different topics. And I think, we're in this bit of a learning curve. And I know a lot of our organizations are reckoning with how are our messaging strategies working, or how best can we approach this, or what did we miss, and how do we tap community leaders or people that how can we get the right information online, right? Because we're living in such a different ecosystem with misinformation and disinformation so rampant. And I think, I'm a true organizer at heart. I think grassroots organizing and being in community and having deep conversations one-on-one is the best way to get back at this. And I think my experience doing offshore wind work and doing community solar work, and then before, I had experience working on the campaign side. I never worked in a district office, but I totally understand the cutting your teeth of working on an election campaign. This is, what matters to people. And I think whether it's a pocketbook issue or something a little bit more abstract like offshore wind that Americans haven't really seen before, we have to be able to give the time as advocates, as organizers, as whatever role we're in, to really getting the education out to the community as much as possible. And I think that's how you change hearts and minds. That's how we combat misinformation. And that's how we move some of the communities that we've seen maybe not move in the right direction or the way that we maybe want them to, but kind of shift that back a little bit. But yeah, hopefully I know that was taking it in a bit of a different direction, but hopefully that's helpful.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Sunni.
I can also jump in real quick because I feel like I learned a lot working with, say, Barnegat Bay. We're a nonpartisan organization, and we're an local grassroots environmental organization in a very red county in New Jersey. So it kind of seems at first glance counterintuitive, but a lot of our supporters are Republicans and people who you don't usually suspect to be advocates for the environment that we see on a national level. But we have a lot of supporters from all different kinds of groups. We work with everybody. And I don't want to repeat what everyone was saying. So like Sean said, meeting people where they're at. We don't necessarily come out talking about climate change, but we talk about the effects that everyone is facing every single day. So we talk about flooding, we talk about water words that work is kind of a handbook that we like to use a lot, and our executive director preaches about, of different ways to meet people and talk about the issues that they're facing in a light that they can understand and respect. So trying to take away the polarization of all of the issues that we are all working and fighting against, and helping our local community members kind of understand and realize that the issues that we're facing, if we're not using climate change as the main big problem, scary problem, we're saying the flooding issues, we're saying that the overdevelopment issues that they're facing, all of these things are connected. Connecting that to their stories and the things that are happening in their town is a really big help. And just being open-minded and hearing out what other people have to say is a really important attribute to have. And I think it goes a long way.
That's great, Brittany. Thank you. If anyone, or if nobody else wants to jump in on that thread, we do have one question in the chat from Dylan, another TCNJ alumni. To anyone, have you ever considered working in the public sector? Why or why not? And could you share any experiences, good or bad, collaborating with public sector employees? So I think our non-public sector people would be best to answer this question, maybe. So Sarah, you want to take it off?
Yeah, I could jump in. I have
Sure.
not worked in the public sector, but I have worked closely with the public sector quite a bit, both in being, receiving funding from federal, state, and local agencies, all sorts, and, working closely with, at Solar Landscape, we work a lot with different agencies and in, workforce development and education. We work with school districts. I think, I haven't ever considered going into the public sector. Just personally, I like the flexibility of the private sector and the nonprofit world. I do feel like there's a lot of value in approaching big systemic challenges like climate change with a tri-sector approach and thinking about, really the best way to come together is to have the private sector, nonprofit, and public sector all working together to solve big challenges, sort of taking a collective impact approach to things. And I think, there's challenges. A lot of agencies, the bureaucracy is real. Things can move very slowly. A lot of my friends who've worked in agencies like, I don't even want to name them, but have just shared their frustrations in, trying to get small things done can be a really big task. But when you do make those accomplishments, it makes a big difference. And so, I always am excited to collaborate with the public sector. And I think it takes young and innovative thinkers to help, go into public service and help shift some of that slow moving effort.
And I think actually, if I could jump off of this as somebody who works in the public sector and now doesn't work in the public sector, there is benefit to working in the public sector so that you understand why things move slowly and why they are the way that they are. It is no less frustrating working on the private side and still having to watch something take months to come to fruition. But exactly to Sarah's point, the number of people, I will say the demographics of staffers in the legislature was always so surprising to me. District offices, especially in the assembly, tend to be staffed by people in their 20s and 30s. And that, when I joined as an intern, absolutely blew me away to see people who were 25, 26, 27 years old who were chiefs of staff in the assembly. I myself became a chief of staff at 24, I think, which was just please don't clap for me. It was so scary. But which is totally not something that I expected, but I think is really, really important when you have legislators who have been in office for 10, 15, 20 years and who, to an extent, do become entrenched in that bureaucracy because they're seeing things as the way that they always are. When you have staffers who come in and who are fresh out of college, who are young people, and have these ideas for big change, it is worth going into wading into that bureaucracy and saying, well, why can't we? And for as slow as things do happen, and I will preface that with don't expect to work in the legislature and get a bill passed in 2 months. It doesn't happen, but that's my pitch for working in the public sector, and I'll just stop there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Sarah and Jess. And I think we'll close out the night with another question we have in the audience. Lisa, I think you raised your hand. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'll be quick, I think. I just thought of this, and this presentation has been absolutely phenomenal, all the panelists. To listen to your story, I definitely relate a lot. But my question, as a a young professional, changing careers, how many environmental jobs did you find on LinkedIn or different job posting websites, and how competitive do you think the environmental job market is right now to get into?
Cool. I'd like to maybe throw my 2 cents in here.
Sure.
Maybe kind of give an idea with this is that I would say I benefited greatly from my skills at networking and being a very personable person. I love to meet new people and make relationships with people across the board. And this right here tonight is kind of a great culmination of that. I knew Solar Landscape, 2 years before I even worked at my first job. I knew about them when I was 21 years old. And then down the line, I ended up working for them. I met Senator Greenstein when I was still an undergrad, when I was at a student government panel, and she was our guest speaker. Save Barnegat Bay ended up being an internship that I had that I still now volunteer with them. So I would say, wherever you can volunteer and also just get a face to a face, actually be somewhere straight up, I think that will help you immensely more than maybe just following a bunch of different networks on LinkedIn or following different pages. But I think that's a little bit of a story I could share, anecdotal evidence from my end. But if anybody else would like to discuss this.
Yeah, so I can throw in two different points. So one, I think right this second, it is competitive, but also know from my company and other people that I talk to in my industry, things are kind of in a wait and see moment right now with the new administration coming in. So I know friends of mine who have jobs right now, but of course are always applying. And they've said they talk to recruiters and yeah, well, jobs are posted, but you might not get movement right this second because there's a lot of uncertainty. So don't be discouraged if you don't hear back right now. Things will become more certain as the month goes on, as the next 2 months go on. So that's what I'd say about that. And then one piece of advice from my experience is when I worked for a career association nonprofit before Blue Point, nothing to do with literally anything I studied or anything I really care about. So I went on LinkedIn, I actually searched TCNJ, political science, TCNJ, environmental, whatever, and reached out to people and said, hey, can I get 5 minutes of your time and get some takeaways from you? I ended up connecting with, I think, 5 or 6 different people, had 5 or 6 different phone calls. None of them led to a job. But it really gave me insight into how things work and what their experience was from a different point of view. And it's funny now because I'll go to a gala or a fundraiser, an event or whatever, and I'll see people that I had phone calls with, and they're like, I'm so happy you found something, and we talked. And it's good to have those connections, like Dave said, on LinkedIn and meeting people in person, but having insightful calls. People are always willing to help. So it's really just not being afraid to message someone and be like, hey, can I get 5 minutes of your time? whenever, and just hop on the phone and just ask simple questions. It's going to be awkward at first, but on your second, third call, you're going to know exactly what you want to ask and figure out how you can get into where you want to go or stay down the path of your end goal.
Awesome. Anybody else like to just cap off? Or if not, that's fine. I also just put in chat, panelists, if you'd like to / feel comfortable, please leave your email in chat if anyone would like to follow up with you after this panel. I'm sure some people might ask you about some internships or any volunteering opportunities down the line. But yeah, I would just like to conclude with, again, thank you all so much for volunteering an hour of your time this evening to join and talk about your experience and to kind of help the next generation of environmentalists maybe navigate their professional world a little bit easier. So thank you all, and have a good night.
Thanks for us pulling this together,
Thank you
David.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.